Welcome to Reddit Storytime. Today we're going to see a post on r/EntitledParents. Without any more talk, let's get into it. My psycho grandmother versus my parents. This story is quite long, so I'm going to start from when I was a baby up until now. I don't have official dates, but I will put the year of when the stories begin. Also, if you're easily triggered, do not read the year 2004 as it contains a very serious topic. Please read 2004 at your own risk if you decide to read it. My mom and dad met when they were 14. They never really hit it off until they were about 23 to 25. 1994. While they were dating, my grandmother was always saying things such as, "My daughter deserves the best and has no business with someone who is dirt poor." My dad wasn't poor, but wasn't very wealthy. He always had a job and has multiple degrees under his belt. When I was being conceived, he was working as a security guard and pulling in a decent amount of money to keep himself and my mother happy. My mother would work day shifts at a local grocery store, packing shelves, working the checkouts, etc. Jumping forward a few weeks later, my parents decided to tell my grandmother that they were having a baby, me. They had already told Dad's family, and it was good vibes all around. But once they told my mother's mom, she wasn't very happy. When my mom told her, she walked away, went outside for a cigarette, and didn't talk to Mom and Dad for about 15 minutes. According to Dad, Mom started bawling her eyes out and locked herself in the bathroom. My grandmother comes back inside and walks up to my father and says, "Here's what's going to happen. She's going to get an abortion, and you're going to disappear." My father was absolutely destroyed that she did not approve of the pregnancy. So Dad left the house and went home without my mother. I do not know what happened when Dad left the house. I haven't heard what happened after that. 1995. I'm born. While my mother was in the hospital, my grandmother came up to see me. According to both my parents, she kept calling me her baby. Dad kept his cool in the hospital as he didn't want to cause a scene, as there were other patients in the room that my mother was in. But my mother absolutely freaked out. She asked my grandmother to leave and was saying something along the lines of, "How dare you? You tried to force me to get an abortion and now you want to say he is your baby? No, fuck you," etc. From what I gather, she ends up leaving. A few days later, it all blows over and my mother and grandmother are okay. 2004. My father is suffering from depression, anxiety, and has lost his job. He searched for about 2 months to find a job, but no one was returning his calls. He starts freaking out as bills need to be paid and food needs to be put on the table. My father gets a call from my grandmother, asking how he was going with getting a job. He tells her that he's been for interviews, but no one has called him back yet. My grandmother starts to belittle him on the phone. "You're a worthless piece of shit. My daughter is going to be homeless because of you, and your son will be taken off of you." Dad hangs up the phone. A few weeks later go by and no one wants to hire him. My father starts falling into a deep depression. He starts spending the next few days in bed just crying. I remember coming into the room trying to play with him, and he would just lay there, staring into nothingness. A few days go by. I think I'm upstairs playing with my PlayStation or playing with something as kids do. I hear my mother screaming. I run downstairs and my mother screams, "OP, help!" I finally get to her, and I see her trying to lift my father up around his ankles. I look up at my father, and he had tried to kill himself by hanging. We cut him down and sent him to the hospital, and they held him for 72 hours. A few days go by, and Dad tells Mom that my grandmother had sent a letter to Dad telling him that this family would be a lot better if he just disappeared, etc., etc. My mother cut all contact with my grandmother after that, and Dad starts going to therapy. Just to clarify, my dad is still alive and well in 2020. After he started going to therapy, he became a lot more open with his feelings and started to improve mentally. 2015. It's Christmas, and we have some family and friends over. We were all having a good time. Some family members are having a good laugh, while others are very drunk. Either way, it was good vibes all around. Around 5:30 p.m., my mother's phone rings. It's my grandmother. My mother disappears into her room with the phone and doesn't come out for 2 hours. Me and Dad check on her every half hour to see if she's okay. When the phone call ends about 2 hours later, she comes out and pulls me aside and tells me what the talk was about. Apparently, my grandmother has lied to my mother her entire life on who her real father is. Mom is bawling her eyes out, and Dad grabs her and they both disappear into the bedroom for a little while. About 30 minutes later, they come out, sit everyone down at the party, and tell them what has happened. Everyone is disgusted in my grandmother, and most of them don't talk to her again after this little stunt. 1st of November, 2019. It's my father's birthday. My mother bought my father tickets to see his favorite band play, Grinspoon. Both are very excited as they haven't seen them play in years. They get ready to go to the concert. While at the concert, my mother complains for a headache. She takes a few painkillers and soldiers on. They watch 5 of the supporting acts, and the headache is getting immensely worse. Grinspoon come on stage and start rocking out. They finish their first song and Mom says to Dad, "We need to go home, my head is killing me." Dad throws her in the car and they both drive home. The second they got home, Mom is sprinting to the front door, runs into the bathroom and vomits. Dad follows behind her and holds her hair and gets her a glass of water. Mom did have a few drinks at the concert, but she wasn't drunk or even tipsy. After she has a good vomit, she goes and lays down on the couch with Dad. 10 minutes go by, and Mom's eyes start rolling into the back of her head. We all start to freak out. Next minute later, she's having a seizure. Dad calls 000, and we rush her to the hospital. After a few tests, Dad rings me and says, "You need to come to the hospital now." I get to the hospital, and Dad is waiting outside. He holds me and says, "OP, you need to say goodbye to your mother. She's had a stroke, and the doctors say that you need to say goodbye now just in case she doesn't make it." I say my goodbyes to my mother, and she heads to surgery. 6 hours later, we get a phone call. The surgery was a success, and she is alive. Me and my father are over the moon. The doctors explained to us that she's lost a lot of her motor functions, but will regain most of it with therapy. A few days later, I'm out at work, and my dad is going to the hospital to visit Mom. My dad goes to walk into her room, and guess who was there? My grandmother. Somehow she caught wind of this. I don't know what was said between her and Dad while Mom was recovering, but I know he said to keep it under wraps, as we will tell everyone in the next few days. The next day, Dad goes up to the hospital, and my grandmother is there again. Only this time, she has brought people that we don't even know. Dad immediately leaves and calls me to ask who they are. I tell them I have no idea. I call my mother's sister, my aunt, and ask what the hell is going on. Apparently, they are just my grandmother's friends, and in my personal opinion, had no right to be there as they didn't know my mother at all. Now, I'm not a violent person at all, but while I was on the phone to my auntie, I said to her, "Do you really think my grandmother deserves to be in the same room as my mother? She has cut her out for years, and now only gives a shit when she almost dies? What about when she needed her support?" My auntie said nothing. I reply with, "You know, if I was the one who walked in and saw her, she would be very lucky to leave with a full head of hair." I hung up the phone. After that phone call, my auntie must have spoken to my grandmother, and she never returned to the hospital. 2 days go by. I get a phone call from the one and only Witch of the West. I answer, not knowing who it is. "Hello, OP speaking." She replies, "Hey OP, it's your grandmother. Remember me?" I reply with, "Yeah, sadly I do. What the fuck do you want?" She starts going off her nut at me, calling me every name under the sun, and saying now that my mother is immobile, that she is going to try and become her carer, and that she is going to make a bunch of lies up on how my dad is a drug addict. My dad has never touched an illegal substance in his life. While she's losing her shit, I press the record button on my phone and just let it capture everything. She hangs up, and I immediately get a lawyer. I see the lawyer a few days later and we talk it over. Because I am my mother's son, I legally consign to become her carer. So I do, and I give my lawyer the audio recording of the phone call me and my grandmother had. I hand her the USB with the recording on it, and she plugs it into her laptop. She listens to it and is in total shock. We set up a court date to take my grandmother to court. 2 months ago, we finally go to court. My grandmother is facing 2 counts of harassment over a cellular device and 1 count of defamation of character. She's not allowed to go near my mother or anyone else in my household until 2023. Overall, I'm satisfied with the verdict. Also, my mother is doing much better since the stroke and is slowly regaining all her motor functions. I couldn't be more proud of her. Wow, that was a roller coaster. I hope OP and everyone else is doing well. OP sure has been through a lot. Thank you for watching. This was Reddit Storytime, and if you want more stories like these, make sure to check out our channel.